Closed captioning is also available and will be utilized throughout the session. And then finally, we just want to go over some session norms to make sure that we're all on the same page. So before we get started, I'm going to briefly outline some of the norms for this session, and we've divided the norms into a few different categories. So under equity of voice and learning, we have take space and make space. So as a participant, please be mindful of any privileged identities you may hold and help to create an environment for everyone to contribute. And then speak from personal experience. So let's own our statements and views about things and not presume to be able to speak for others. And then under how we show up for ourselves and each other, we have openness to learning. So an understanding that we're all learners in this space, flexibility and patience. Things may not always go 100% according to plan, just like many of you being named Karen. And sometimes technology is at play, so we thank you for your grace and flexibility. And then use the chat box mindfully. So when you use the chat box, we ask that you try to make your questions and comments as relevant to what we're talking about as possible. And also a level of confidentiality. So take away lessons, but not personal content. And we'll sometimes share knowledge and co-share ideas and resources in these sessions. But if anyone shares anything personal, we ask that you don't bring it out of the space. All right, so without further ado, I'd like to hand it off to Karen Shiffllett of Changing Worlds to guide us through today's session.
Thanks so much, Ariel. Greetings, everybody. Welcome. It's great to be with you to address this topic, healing-centered engagement in arts practice. Thank you, Ingenuity. Thank you, Courtney and Ariel, for this opportunity to be part of the Constellation program and for the support of the cohort in preparing for the session. It's really, really appreciated. For audience members that maybe I haven't met yet, my name is Karen Shiffllett. I work for Changing Worlds. We're an arts education not-for-profit in Chicago, primarily serving youth in Chicago public schools. Our in-school and out-of-school programs are spread across the city, mostly in divested communities. And we've been doing this work for 25 years. As Courtney mentioned, I'm responsible for evaluation and professional learning programs. I actually first learned about healing-centered engagement through Ingenuity, through Courtney, about a year ago. She sent me a YouTube video of Dr. Ginwright doing a teach-in, which was recorded, I believe, right around the beginning of the pandemic. And it resonated with me intensely, as well as my colleagues at Changing Worlds, such that we're all getting certified. The Changing Worlds program team is all getting certified in healing-centered engagement through Dr. Ginwright's organization called Flourish Agenda. We've introduced this to our teaching artists, and we're currently in the process of embedding it into our curriculum. So this is our pilot year with healing-centered engagement. And as such, we're appreciative of having this dedicated time and space for learning more about it and broadening our understanding of it. And it actually feels great to circle back to Ingenuity to continue that learning process. So again, thank you. I'm also excited to address this topic, not just theoretically, but from the perspectives of people actually doing the work. So Cynthia Johnson-Woodfolk is a teaching artist who many of you may know, and her partner last fall, Aoife Duran, a CPS teacher, worked together for an in-school residency, and they're here to share their experiences with this approach. And I think there's a lot we can learn from them. These are amazing, thoughtful, generous, inspiring individuals, and so much more, and I can't wait to introduce them in a moment. But first, I just want to share a little bit of context and background for folks who may not be familiar with healing-centered engagement. So a little bit about why Changing Worlds wanted to invest in healing-centered engagement. As I mentioned, we serve youth in Chicago public schools through art programs. And the purpose of our art programs are to assist youth in exploring their identities and enhancing cross-cultural understanding. That's our mission. We really want to create spaces where youth feel like their identities are affirmed and they can be exposed to and learn about other cultures. That's what we do. The mechanism for achieving that is through the arts. That's the tangible experience. Healing-centered engagement informs our mindset or approach for how we work with the youth. So that's what undergirds the way in which we want to carry out these arts programs. And what I love is it gives us a really holistic way of doing that. So like I said, I want to share a little bit about what healing-centered engagement is. And then I'll introduce you to our panelists, Aoife Duran and Cynthia Johnson-Woodfolk. We'll talk a little bit about their residency and then focus on relationships as a principle of healing-centered engagement. We'll take a little break. And then during the second hour, we'll address meaning as relates to healing. And we will wrap up with some of your reflections. I'll also share a list of resources that have informed my thinking with you, and in the hopes that it's something you'd maybe want to take a look at a later date. Everything that I'm citing is going to be in that list of resources. So you'll have that. Just adding a couple of things about how to engage to fully experience this the way it was intended. I encourage you to minimize distractions if that's possible so that you can really be in community with this group. Most of the session is structured as an interview. However, you will be asked to participate by sharing thoughts or your questions in the chat. You don't need to wait until you're prompted though to share reflections in the chat. If you hear something that resonates with you right away and it's something you want to communicate, by all means, pop it into the chat. Emma Leff, one of my colleagues from Changing Worlds, is going to be monitoring the chat. Thank you, Emma. And we'll share out some of the reflections. So yeah, I want to stress that I welcome your participation, but I don't want you to feel forced to participate if you don't want to. So take my prompt as an invitation. Okay. The only other thing I want to say is we're going to remain as a whole group for the duration of this session. There are no breakout rooms. And finally, in terms of how to engage, I would say in addition to taking in the information, it's also about healing. So keep your own in mind and attend to your body, attend to your mind, attend to your emotions as we're going through all of this. Okay, so what are the takeaways? The overarching takeaway is inspiration for possibilities of what healing-centered engagement can look like in arts practice. My hope is that by listening to what Cynthia and Aoife have to say, we can imagine and embrace ideas for what it can look like in an arts program. The two specific areas, though, that we're going to address with regard to relationships and meaning, what I'd like us to do with those is really examine trust formation in a transformational relationship. And I'll define what that is a little bit later. As well as during the section on meaning, I'll have you interpret and find your own meaning in one of the art activities that the students did during this residency. So those are my hopes for what we will accomplish during our time together. Going into a little bit of background about healing-centered engagement, most of my understanding comes from Dr. Sean Ginwright. And just by way of introducing him, Dr. Ginwright is one of the nation's leading innovators and thought leaders on African-American youth, youth activism, and youth development. He's a professor in the Africana Studies Department and a senior research associate at San Francisco State University. His research examines the ways in which youth and urban communities navigate through the constraints of poverty and struggle to create equality and justice in their schools and communities. He pioneered this framework called Healing-Centered Engagement in 2018, which is based on over 30 years of research. And he defines healing-centered engagement as a non-clinical, strengths-based approach that advances a holistic view of healing and recenters culture as an identity as a central feature in personal well-being for young people, their families, and those who work with them. He then identifies 5 principles of healing-centered engagement, which will be on the next slide. There are 5 of them, and the acronym is KARMA. The first is actually culture, race, and identity, which refers to the values and norms that connect us to a shared identity. Agency is the individual and collective power to act, create, and change personal conditions and external systems. Relationships is the capacity to create, sustain, and grow healthy connections with others. Meaning is the profound discovery of who we are, why we are, and what purpose we were born to serve. And aspirations refer to the capacity to imagine, set, and accomplish goals for personal and collective livelihood and advancement. So these are the 5 principles that make up healing-centered engagement. And I hope just these couple of slides maybe provide a little bit of information for folks who might be new to this idea. I also hope it gives you a sense of why it's relevant in arts practice. I think it's an approach that anyone or any organization invested in positive youth development can utilize, but I feel that the arts are well positioned to bring healing-centered engagement forward because arts educators get youth to think. You get youth to be creative, to make their own choices, to address topics that are relevant to them. So I think we're uniquely positioned to really bring this approach to life. And with that, I'm delighted to present our speakers, Cynthia Johnson-Woodfolk and Aoife Duran. Cynthia, if you could give the audience a wave, or if she can be spotlighted, that would be great. A little background on Cynthia. Cynthia is a recipient of the Top Ladies of Distinction Incorporated Orchid Award for Performing Arts, Columbia University Scholastic Press Gold Crown Award for Traditional Fiction, and 3-time finalist for the Excellence in Teaching Award for Creative Writing. Cynthia's notoriety is in her chameleon-like abilities to adapt to varying writing forms, extending her expertise as an essayist, playwright, actress, singer, and motivational speaker, where she continues her proficiency teaching multidisciplinary arts and creative writing in higher education facilities and outreach programs in numerous urban communities. I met Cynthia about 10 years ago when she joined Changing Worlds, teaching artist cadre, and I've been privileged to observe her teaching in many different residencies over the years in Chicago Public Schools. Cynthia, thank you for being here to contribute to our shared understanding of healing-centered engagement today. I appreciate you. Our next speaker is Aoife Duran. If she could be spotlighted, or Aoife, if you could give the audience a wave, that would be fantastic. Aoife holds a master's degree in teaching and leadership from St. Xavier University, as well as a Bachelor's of Science in Elementary Education with endorsements in social science, language arts, and teacher leader. Aoife is privileged to be teaching 4th and 5th graders at Henry R. Clissold Elementary School. As a lifelong learner, she believes children learn best when parents and teachers work together. During her 18 years in the classroom, Aoife has been committed to building effective relationships with parents and sharing her passion for learning with her students. There she is, hey Aoife. Aoife and Cynthia were partnered last fall for the in-school residency. Thank you, Aoife, for your contributions to this learning experience. It's very much appreciated. So to have the audience get to know both of you a little bit better, I'm hoping you can each speak to your thoughts about healing-centered engagement. Aoife, let's begin with you. What do you think healing-centered engagement has to offer that other positive youth development approaches don't?
Hi, Karen. So I think we know that the arts offer so much, but when we focus more on the healing-centered engagement, it's more about helping kids make those relationships and seeing the adults working together and having those amazing relationships. And I think with everything our students are going through right now, it's so important. Being back in the classroom after COVID, the trauma from that, the SEL needs that we're seeing, just the stuff the students are dealing with aside from all of that, maybe family struggles or a nasty divorce at home. So there's so much going on right now that our kids need to heal from. So it's really important to have the healing centered engagement learning. And I think helping kids build those relationships is really important.
Thank you, Aoife. I feel like there's probably a lot of folks who will understand your sentiments very well. Cynthia, if you could please share your thoughts as well on healing-centered engagement. What do you think it has to offer?
Well, I am in complete agreement with Mrs. Doran, but I think it also lends a hand in helping us to get to know the individual, the student as an individual. The teaching is more individualized, if I can say it in that manner. We're talking about culture and race and identity. We're talking about establishing relationships and meanings and aspirations. And so this approach causes us to ask questions of our students, which in turn has them ask questions of themselves. And they're able to bring that to the table. So right away, relationships are being established through healing-centered learning. And it's like the beginning of a race. It's the gun has gone off and, you know, we've taken off in this race. So it takes off right away. It doesn't take time to warm into it or ease into it. Right away, you're right into it and establishing a relationship. And it's both ways. There's healing that happens both ways through this type of engagement, because not only are you asking questions of the students, but you're also asking questions of yourself, and they're asking questions of you too. So it's an even exchange.
Wow, thank you for that. Thank you for that, Cynthia. Let's learn a little bit more about the residency itself. So if you could advance to the next slide, please. I just want to get some background on what the project was all about. So we know it was at Clissold Elementary with 4th and 5th grade students. This was a 10-week program, and it engaged creative writing through poetry, music, and more. And you created a book and a video. But I'm hoping you can share a little bit of background, like how did you get involved in the program? What were your intentions for student learning? How did the program develop? Could we start with you, Cynthia, please?
Sure. I got involved with the program. I'll start with that one. A project that I did last year with Clissold, a conversation with the principal and with Joanne Vina. And that got me into Clissold School, and I completely fell in love with Clissold and the staff there. And I was fortunate and very blessed to be asked to come back. And so in this development of the curriculum, I brought some things to the table that I had brought to the table before. And one of them was to establish a relationship with the students. That was most important for me. And so what's hilarious is that the course was actually developed to explore the historical significance of poetry and music. So I had hoped to pair the ancestry of the call and response of the Greek, European, and African traditions as they respond to R&B, rap, and rhyming to beat poetry. And the push was to help the students to discover the correlation between poetry and music, and to help them cultivate their written and oral voices, incorporating basic storytelling forms and principles into songwriting and, if I can use this word, a protest learning, and to tap on the social emotional elements of that, which was simply getting to know who we are, where we come from, and what we stand for. So that's what the basis of the curriculum was, more so music and poetry, and getting to know who we are, where we come from, and what we stand for.
I see. Incredible. Okay. How about from your perspective, Aoife? What was, how did you get involved in the program? What were the intentions for student learning for you?
So the principal told me she had this opportunity and would I be interested? And it was a very busy day. And she said, come down, I want you to meet somebody. I don't know if you remember that day, Miss Cynthia. It was, the principal was in and out. She had a million things going on. And I heard poetry and music, and I was like, I don't care what it is, I'm in. And then we got to chatting, and we were going over the curriculum, and I loved, and I said, I don't know anything about this. Haven't heard of this before, but I'm sold. I definitely want this in my classroom. My kids need this. I think this would be great. And yeah, it was great from the beginning.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I got to share with the audience that a big part of why I wanted the two of you to be able to speak to them was because I came to your classroom to visit a program last fall. The class had to unexpectedly pivot to remote learning at the last minute. And I was blown away by watching the two of you interact with each other, figuring out how you were going to pivot. There was something in your communication, something in your interaction that immediately got my attention. And one of the first things that came to mind was trust. I felt like I was watching what a really trusting collaborative relationship looks like. And I'm going to ask you to speak to that in a minute, but first I'd like to engage the group. So on the next slide, there is a prompt for everyone to weigh in on how you build trust. This is a really broad question. If you can, I'd like for you to think about how you build trust with school partners, whether that is a classroom teacher, if you do in-school programs, an after-school resource coordinator, the office clerk, the security guard, the principal, whoever you tend to have most of your communication with in a school. How do you build trust? So take a moment, think about that. Maybe think about what are it in terms of what are the prerequisites for trust, or what makes it more likely for you to be able to trust someone in a relationship. And please share those thoughts in the chat.
I'll give everybody a second to put some thoughts in. All right, I see a lot of folks who build trust by making an effort to get to know everybody and get to know their jobs, and demonstrating respect and interest in everybody else's role at the school. Seeing a lot about listening and communication and transparency, and being reliable with partners to build trust. I see a couple of people talking about vulnerability, especially with students, to sort of balance out relationships and power. I see reliability again. Let's see. I see folks talking about like wanting to learn from everyone they interact with, like students and adults alike, consistency. I see a lot of also about authenticity and showing up as your full self, and that includes vulnerability, I think. Yeah, and just being genuine in general. So those are some of the common threads that I see. I encourage everyone to go through and like read everybody's responses.
Fantastic. Thank you, Emma. That's great. That's fantastic. That's really, really great to see and hear. So Aoife and Cynthia, can you share how you all build trust with one another? Let's start with Aoife.
So I just sort of felt from day one that this was somebody I could lean on. I felt like I had a partner in the classroom. There was just this level of commitment that I saw from day one that that I really respected. And so I just immediately knew this is somebody that I could trust. Also, we have 4 different classes throughout the day. So the needs of each class is different, the needs of each kid is different. And so when you're willing to just say, okay, we've got to do something different, or I'm going to bring in some more SEL for this group. And seeing that another person is, that kindness towards my students and that patience with them. So I think just that partnership really allowed us to build trust.
Awesome. Thanks, Aoife. How about you, Cynthia?
I have to say, again, meeting Miss Doran for the very first time was like the grandest experience. It was the energy that came into that room. First of all, being greeted by administration, the principal was there, security guards, everyone knew that I was coming into the door. I felt like a celebrity because everyone knew, and it was hello from the beginning. So to be greeted with that energy from the beginning, that warmth had already set the tone for a sense of trust. You saw support right away. So support was very, very key because if I didn't see that support, then it caused my body to shift into a different energy. And there were some things that you knew you had to build and construct, but these things were already in place from the first initial step into the school, and even on the outside, from the people opening. It was like a valet service, people opening your doors to receive the children going into the school and saying hello from there. So you knew from the warmth of the community that this was a trusting and nurturing area. And then to walk in and see a teacher who is prepared and open, and that smile says so much. It says hello in so many different ways. And then to sit down and to see that this partner had looked at the curriculum, actually looked at the curriculum and knew what was there. And it's ready. We're already prepared to have a conversation, sets a tone of trust. You can trust that your partner is going to be 100% invested with you. And so it doesn't feel as if you are alone. You automatically have this great big hug that you want to do, and that is being done to you. To be open-minded. My partner was very open-minded. When we looked at the curriculum, there were things said such as, what do you see in the curriculum? What are your thoughts? Right away, what are your thoughts? And how can you add to this? Get in where you fit in. What do you want to add to the curriculum? And the fact that she actually had ideas to add to the curriculum was also great. And to be accepting of those ideas, it was just for me, it was just a godsend. She was prepared. She was open-minded. She was a professional. Now, what do I mean by that? Again, she came in with the noise of the children. You walk in, you hear the children in the hallway, and you can see that she was in a classroom, because we all, as teachers, we have that, I call it frazzle razzle. We have that where we're trying to put our minds together to focus from being with the kids to now, I got to do something with an adult to switch that language, to switch gears. She came in switching those gears and then sat down again, prepared and ready, and knowing was also, a great thing. And she was accommodating. She talked about the space. She talked about each classroom that I would be walking into, and the classroom was hers. So to also talk about what the space would look like, and to ask what my needs were of that space. So not just being accommodating, but being an accommodating host. It felt like going to someone's house for dinner. They wanted you to be there. They welcomed you in. And that's what helped to build and establish that trust, that there was a warmth and a want and a shared sense of, I want to meet you and you want to meet me. Let's sit down and commune together. That was all established from the beginning.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot there, but ultimately what I'm taking is, it sounds like you all were in it together. you really came at it with the same level of investment. And like Aoife said, you know, she felt like she could lean on you. You felt like she was welcoming and open. So it sounds like all of the stars were aligned. And we know that not every situation we walk into is going to be like that. I think it's amazing and really special when it does happen. And I think it's great to be able to shine a light on that, to say that, yes, it is possible, even though it may not be in every single scenario that we walk into when we partner with schools. So I want to transition us. Thank you both so much for sharing how you initially met and started this beautiful relationship and partnership together. I want to transition to what Flourish Agenda has to say about relationships. So relationships, again, are one of the principles of healing-centered engagement, and it's defined as the capacity to create, sustain, and grow healthy connections with others. But then there are also some competencies that we want to see develop in our youth that fit under relationships. So being able to cultivate transformational connections, having empathy, and being open to other perspectives. Now, for Changing Worlds, practicing empathy and seeing the value of inclusivity and belonging have been part of our work for a very, very long time. But this language, cultivating transformational connections, is new for us in thinking about interpersonal relationships. So on the next slide, I just want to talk about what that means a little bit. So Flourish Agenda talks about two types of relationships: transactional and transformative or transformational. Transactional are really defined by roles, positions, and authority. They're really about, the motivation for engagement is more about outcomes than it is about connection. An example would be coworkers whose interactions are strictly about getting a job done and not getting involved with the other person beyond their immediate function. Whereas transformative or transformational relationships are characterized by 3 C's: care, commitment, and connection. When we care about people, we show them that they matter. When we're committed to people, we are authentically engaged. We hold ourselves accountable when we're committed. When we connect with people, we establish a bond that allows for trust, for vulnerability, for intimacy, for transparency. So much of just about everything I heard Aoife and Cynthia say, and what I saw in the chat earlier, really speaks to us as a group valuing transformative relationships. So going back to the previous slide that talks about those competencies, Aoife, I'd love for you to share how you saw one or maybe more of these competencies developed in your students through this program.
So yeah, I saw all of these competencies: empathy, really the transformational connections. Though I was thinking about that one, just how the you know, we started off week 1 just introducing Miss Cynthia, and I kind of prepped the kids and said, you know, they're 4th and 5th graders, so they're really excited if they think they've been chosen for something. So I said, you know, our principal could have picked any classroom, but we are, you know, getting this opportunity. So they were so hyped up, so excited. And, you know, I said, who likes art? Who likes music? And I'm the writing teacher, and they're not really into writing. So not many 4th and 5th graders are excited about writing. So I said, we're gonna, you know, bring this into our writing class. And so they were pretty excited about it. And then really by week 2, I felt Miss Cynthia and I both really felt they were already invested, the kids, they were already engaged. I definitely think the connections, just the kids being willing to open up, us telling our stories, the kids really just participated. The level of participation went up over as the weeks went on. And I think I really saw just growth in how the kids, when they're listening to each other tell their stories, and just having that empathy, but that has to be modeled, and that really has to be taught in the classroom. And if you're not doing that, you know, the kids don't get that opportunity. So that's why it was such an awesome opportunity for my students. And just the change over the course of the 10 weeks, it was pretty huge. I definitely think I saw a lot of growth in my students with just listening to somebody else's perspective, you know, everything.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. I mean, and I think you said it best when you said it has to be modeled. You know,
Yeah.
I truly believe that you and Cynthia modeled all of these things for your students. So that's fantastic. Cynthia, how realistic are these competencies for a 10-week residency that was meeting in uncertain times? Sometimes you had to pivot to virtual instruction on the fly. What do you have to say about that?
It was very realistic, if I can say it, very realistic. The very first thing that I had to do was take a look at what the curriculum was asking of the students, and having had the opportunity to meet them for the first time, gave me the opportunity to take a look at what was developed versus what needed to be developed. And to ask that same question, is this realistic? Are we going to make it through every single one of these points? And the answer was yes, but it didn't quite look like the way that I first planned it out. In other words, what was a 10-week residency, if I needed to take the time to break that down from 10 weeks and see it as 5 weeks, I was able to do that, or to see it as 20 weeks. I was able to do that through the growth of the students, and also through side conversations, if I can say, with Mrs. Duran. We would go off to the side and have conversations and say, what's working here? What more do we need to do? What are you feeling? So it went more so off of instinct, and again, the energy from the students in the room, and watching how they responded to questions. To ask a child, what has changed to you? And then to see them respond without giving the definition of change, but leaving it open enough so that they could reach in and grab onto something, latch onto something that meant something to them. And then to expand the question out and say, so what has changed to you? What evokes change? What has changed globally? And how do you fit into that change? What change do you cause to happen? And to have kids go for that, and to watch one classroom to the next classroom, to the next classroom, to the next classroom, answer on so many different levels, said to the curriculum, there's a lot more. There's a lot more that we could do here. We can expand this, or we can stay right here. I'm not bound to this 10-week curriculum that I have developed. What I'm bound to is what's needed from the kids, what they're yanking from me, what they're yanking from Mrs. Duran and I as a partner. What more, they're asking us questions without asking questions. They're telling us things without coming out and saying it. They're writing things down that we're looking at, and then they're responding in such a way through their bodies and through their facial expressions, and through, I can even say, their liveliness, how they're even interacting with each other, that says, okay, wait a minute, maybe we want to spend a little bit more time here. And we were, after like 6 weeks, even after 4 weeks, we're like, okay, this is not long enough. This is not long enough. So this is not realistic right now. We want more time. And then we realized the pronoun we were using is we, meaning us as the teachers. We wanted more time with the students, and we were hearing the same things from the kids. They kept saying, is this going to be are we going to see you every Tuesday? Every Tuesday? And how long? How long? I mean, when it's going to, it's not going to end, is it? It's not going to end every Tuesday. At what time? They were just as eager as we were, which says 10 weeks is realistic, but unrealistic, because we want so much more time. I still want so much more time with the children, because the thing that I think about is what was done within 10 weeks, even with the challenges of COVID and having to go from being, if I can say, in person, live and in person, and then having to be remote. The way Mrs. Duran and I looked at it, said, it won't stop the revolution. The children want us, we want to be there, so we're going to make it happen, no matter what we have to do, no matter what hoops we got to jump through, no matter what rope we have to, we have to run in, we're going to make it happen. And the children were just the same way, no matter what. When you look at the numbers of when you go from being in person to remote learning, numbers drop. That did not happen. We saw just about the same amount of children remotely as we did being in the classroom, which says a lot to you, which says 10 weeks is not enough. So I wonder what would happen if this was a year-long residency, longer than 10 weeks. Because even if you give us 15, we're going to want 20. We're going to want 25. We're going to keep pushing for it because the kids keep asking for it. And when you see that, I'm going to call it that transformational change in both you and the students, it makes you think about the healing curriculum. Who's being healed here? Not just the children, us as well, and the community. And when parents approach you and say, they missed you, where are you? Then you know that something's happening inside the home too, and inside the community. It's outside of the classroom. It's outside of you. It's outside of the kids. It's happening, and you want to be a part of that change, a part of that healing. But then you look at 10 weeks and it's like, okay, here's a Band-Aid, go sit to the side and wait for the doctor. We need it. It was realistic, but again, not realistic because we wanted more time. I think about what would happen with more time.
I hear you. That beautifully said. So I feel like what allowed you to still achieve these goals was your flexibility, your collaboration, your determination to engage with the students in a certain way, yet you could have gone so much further had the residency been extended. Absolutely. I want to engage the audience a little bit to get your voice on transformational relationships. Hearing what Aoife and Cynthia have shared about theirs, what questions or comments do you all have about trying to cultivate transformational relationships with school personnel, or if you have questions or comments that are specific to Cynthia and Aoife's partnership, I welcome those as well. So please take a couple of minutes and pop those in the chat. If you could go to the next engagement slide, please. Yes. What thoughts or questions do you have about cultivating transformative or transformational relationships with school personnel in our scenario? Take a moment and pop them in the chat, please.
While folks are thinking, I'll just say it's a love fest in the chat right now. Lots of folks hyping you guys up, Cynthia and Aoife. So Alva asks, it sounds like team teaching is highly recommended, which maybe a question there is, can you guys highlight what some more of the strengths to team teaching are?
Emma, are you asking that question to us?
Yeah. So yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Highlights of team teaching. One, I would say a transformation of energy. So with having a co-partner, there are some days when you may walk in and you feel drained right away. When you meet your partner is right there to build you up. Your partner builds you up. That transformation of energy is like an immediate connection where you take from them, they take from you, and right away you are rejuvenated. Having a second set of eyes to see what you may not see is also, it's golden. It's golden because like with Mrs. Duran, she was able to give insight into some things that I may never have had privilege to. So having her there and having her expertise and her insight was key to everything that happened there. And also our little side conversations, it was constant communication, constant talking to each other, constant supporting each other, constant building each other up, constant, you take this side, I take that side, constant meeting in the middle. Having that is so much better, because it lets you know you are not alone in this. You are not alone. And for the children to see that type of a partnership, to see that relationship when it's so missing. I'll say it's so missing in the world right now. It's at a much lower level than everything else. That's one of those things that I feel is lacking. But to see it working in a classroom, that a teacher and an artist, or can I say a teacher and a teacher, or better yet, let's just make it plain and simple. Two friends are in the classroom sharing ideas and thoughts and energy and expertise. We're listening to each other. That type of communication being modeled consistently is, as the commercial says, is priceless.
I love it.
I don't know if I can say it any better than that, but we really just developed, I got lucky because I think we developed a friendship, and I, got somebody that I can lean on. And yeah, those stressful days, or even if it's a great day, but then you get that one stressful class, and somebody that can just kind of bring the energy back when you're kind of feeling it. Yeah, it was absolutely wonderful. It was a privilege for me, and I was really sad to see it end. So it wasn't just for the kids. There was a ton of positive for me too. So thank you.
That's
Off of that,
thank y'all.
Off of that, one last thing I'm seeing in the chat is the need for more time is resonating with pretty much everybody, and folks who really, want to be embedded in schools over the course of school years, not weeks and months. So yeah, that definitely resonates.
Phenomenal. Well, again, I love listening to you all. I could listen to you all for hours because your energy is fantastic. And I really, truly believe that it's your partnership, your relationship that set the foundation for everything else that happened, which is why I wanted to kick off our first hour on relationships. It was the thing that, like hearing the two of you in the spaces is giving me great vibes, but being in the classroom was on a whole other level. So I'm really truly hoping that our audience members is able to kind of get a sense of what that energy can look like. Hopefully you've had similar kind of situations for yourself, but we're gonna take a very short break and come back. Oh, I'm so sorry. Before we take off for break, though, I wanted to have students have the last word on relationships. So on our post survey, the students in the program, 4th and 5th graders, filled out a post survey, and this is what they told us about trust and empathy. 69% of the students involved felt like the program really helped them build trust, and 72% felt that the program helped them to think about different points of view. So this is really validating feedback. Over the years, I found that students don't feel like they need to filter their thoughts, or they kind of tell you as it is. And so I trust this data, and I feel like, again, that really speaks to the foundation that was set for them by your partnership. So let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to transition to meaning. Let's see you back at 11:03. So we'll take a 5-minute break, please. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Kitty.
Karen, you cut your hair?
I sure,
Looks good.
I sure did. Locks are gone.
Been there, did that before. It looks beautiful. You look beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you, love. All right, it is 11:03. Some of us are back. Just making sure that our speakers are back.
I'm here.
Awesome sauce. All right. Thanks, everybody. Wow, that first hour, I'm buzzing off the energy. So for the second half, hi, Kitty. Oh, you all are killing me. Killing me. For the second portion, we're going to focus on meaning, and we're going to jump right into it. So before I get into what Flourish Agenda has to say, I just want to find out from Cynthia and Aoife, beyond relationships, which I don't want to minimize by any stretch. Again, I feel like that was foundational to everything. What else was meaningful for you about this program? Let's start with Cynthia, then Aoife.
Oh, wow, that took me off guard. Okay, it really did. What did I find meaningful? I found, first of all, the relationship between the principal, the vice principal, the security guards, the janitors, the teachers' aides, the students, the secretaries in the office. All of those things were meaningful because it was developed. We developed relationships. It became, again, as if I was invited to dinner every week, being greeted at the door, very important. Being greeted in the office, you know, all of us having conversations about the curriculum, about what was happening with the children, about what they were seeing, meeting parents outside. I didn't know the parents, the students introduced me to their parents, and to get the opportunity to talk to the parents about what they're noticing happening with their children at home and how excited they are to finally get the opportunity to meet me and excited to see their children being excited about being who they are. Having parents say they're asking them questions that they never thought they would be asked. And then it made them sit down as a family and have a conversation. In other words, it was almost like getting back to Mayberry. It was that was very meaningful to me. Having such wonderful students care about you, looking forward to you walking through the door. That was meaningful. Having Mrs. Duran bring her ideas to the table, that was meaningful. Having Mrs. Duran step off to the side to say, is this a water day or is this a, is this a Pepsi or a Coke day, was meaningful because we knew what that meant. It was like, okay, is it a stressful day or is this an easy day? What is it? Being able to be vulnerable was a strength. That is meaningful. I mean, I could go on forever. And I'm not going to, but just to say, there was so many meaningful things. I could not put a number on it. I could not, I just couldn't do it. Just those things are the ones that, pop out right away.
Well, that's plenty. I especially love hearing the ripple effect outside of the classroom to the parents, out into the broader school community. That's fantastic. How about you, Aoife?
Yeah. So my school is a pretty awesome place to be, I have to say. The kids are great. We have fabulous admin, office staff, the other teachers, the aids, the SICAs. I mean, it's just really great. But what really, I guess at the end of the day for me, it was just how excited the kids were when they were coming in on a Tuesday. So, you know, I meet them at the door and they're in their lines and they're so excited. And is Miss Cynthia here today? And I'm like, well, you weren't that excited when I was here yesterday. And I'm like, yes, she's here. It's Tuesday. She's here. And they were so excited. And, you know, if you've got kids that say, hey, today's Tuesday, we've got Miss Cynthia on Tuesday, I'm going to school today, you know, attendance was never an issue on Tuesday. So there's so many takeaways. I think also, I mean, like you said, I could go on forever. There's so many takeaways, but the excitement level of the kids coming in on a Tuesday, that's way at the top of the list for me. Definitely a lot of positive feedback from parents. And I think it's just so good for kids to see when they can see two teachers working together and we're friends, we like each other, it's going well, we're respectful of each other, we're going to make sure that we're not going to let you, you know, undermine us, or you know how kids can do that. So we're going to be a team. And it's so good for kids to see that. The more kids see those positive adult relationships, the better. So I mean, I could just go on forever, but yeah, the excitement level of the kids is top of the list for me.
That's great. That's fantastic. I love hearing that. Okay, so let's talk about what Flourish Agenda has to say about meaning. They define it as the profound discovery of who we are, why we are, and what purpose we were born to serve. And their competencies for youth are to explore and investigate their personal motivations, to practice empathy, and to recognize the value of inclusivity and belonging. And I really, you know, I appreciate this focus on meaning as part of non-clinical healing, because I think it implies looking beneath the surface, asking why, trying to figure out relevance and value. And I wonder how many times students get to do an activity and actually know why they're doing it, or feel that it's actually relevant to them. I know there's so many pressures in schools to accomplish various benchmarks, but taking the time to contemplate meaning and bringing that forward is, I think, a really important component of becoming, having that self-realization and self-actualization happen for young kids. So with that said, I'd like to hear about some of the activities that the students did, or have the audience hear about them. Let's first have Cynthia set up the creative writing activity. If you could talk about the poem, your intention for the poem, how you set it up for the kids, what the process looked like. If you just give us some background on the poem.
Okay, so the poem was written from an icebreaker. And the guiding question was, what has changed to you? Or who or what evokes change? So the activity was to take the repetition, the effective repetition of Octavia Butler, and to mimic African rhythms through call and response. So the quote from Octavia Butler is, all that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. The only lasting truth is change. God is change. And so having the kids give the definition of change, what is change to you? And then who or what evokes change was the basis for them to recreate this poem in their own words, and a repetition poem, which is when a line repeats itself, a line or a word or a phrase repeats itself within the poem. And so it was rearranged the words of either Octavia Butler, and we also paired next to it Webster's definition of change, which was the act of becoming different, or to shift from one to another, or to alter. So you can either take that definition and rearrange those words and rearrange your understanding of it, or extend your understanding of it, or rearrange the words of Octavia Butler and twist it and turn it into a sense of repetition poem that speaks to you, using call and response. That was the that was the writing activity, writing prompt. And I don't know, Karen, I think this would be a great time for them to hear what one of the students did.
Perfect.
My poem is called Everything I Touch. Everything I touch, I change. I touch video games and make them entertain me. Everything I touch, I change. I especially touch music because it helps me relax. I touch, I change, I feel. I like being relaxed because I experience calmness and I feel ready for anything. I touched, changed, and I changed. To write my poem, I studied the Octavia Butler quote and the word change. I felt that I too could cause change, so I thought about everything I touch on a daily basis and what would happen if I caused change in them. I started the poem following the instructions given by Miss Cynthia. Think about change and who or what causes it to happen. She told us to take the words of Octavia Butler and to create a repetition poem. She had taught us about the tradition of call and response singing, and I decided to make my poem be both call and response and repetition because I wanted to challenge myself. It was way more authentic and got me in the mood for writing. On the other hand, in my other classes, it seems more like work than fun. She even changed the people in my class. We were way nicer and way more helpful. We worked together to make a book and a video. When we saw what we had done, we felt like we had accomplished something. Wow.
Wow, indeed. Wow, indeed. Thank you, Cynthia, for putting that video together for us so we could hear directly from one of the students in the program, Marco Brown. Very much appreciated. What I would love for audience members to do is, if you're inclined, share what meaning you found in hearing that poem. I would love to know what you think, what you interpret as meaningful from what you just heard. Take a moment to do that, and I'm sure Emma will be checking out your comments in the chat.
Yes, and people are, I think, still sort of processing the prompt, but I'm seeing a lot of bigger positive reactions and, you know, lots of joy from that, for sure.
Just going to jump in real quick. Marco is one of our finest students. He is awesome. He's an awesome kid, an awesome student. He really gets it. He really puts in that effort. So I just love watching that.
Yes, thank you, Eva.
So I see Jesse answering the question, saying the contrast with his other classes and how writing looks different in his other classes is really meaningful. So the way that students compare and contrast, I see a lot of people sort of like picking out pieces of what he said and saying like, this to me is saying I wanted to challenge myself, or the line about changing and being changed. Mars is talking about the process versus the product of how you get somewhere versus what you make. And I see some other folks sort of like commenting on Marco's performance and his embodiment of the poem, and that being a really sort of meaningful step for especially students of that age. The confidence, willingness, and assurance. That's what Shaniqua says about the video. Those were meaningful. There's lots of good stuff, and it keeps rolling in. Let's see. Yes, I think I'll let folks scroll themselves as well, so we can have some time.
Sounds good. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for that. Yeah, the first time I saw that, I was blown away, and Courtney and Ariel and I watched it right before the session, and it had the same impact on me that it had the first time I watched it. So yes, I'm delighted to hear and watch Marco perform and reflect. So let's hear a little bit from Aoife on your reflections on the poetry. So we were really fortunate to be able to hear from Marco about his thoughts. How did other students respond to this creative writing project? You'd mentioned that Marco was one of your top students, but for some of the students, what do you think it was like for them to do this activity?
So it was, I think Marco said it really well when he said, like, the other classes, it's work. They didn't realize they were working. They didn't realize what they were learning, and they didn't realize those levels that they were reaching. They just were having a great time in the classroom, and there was singing, and there was music, and there was engagement, and it was amazing. So yeah, they didn't see it as work, but the way they spoke to each other, the questions that they asked, realizing that they have the power as an 11-year-old, as a 10-year-old, to change something, that you could literally see the light bulb go on. And they had that realization that, and then we'll probably talk about it in a while, but when they went home and had certain conversations with their parents, it just blew their minds. And so, it's interesting because when they come to school, it's like sit and learn and sit and listen to the teacher and give us this final product and take this test and take your notes. But this was a totally different way of learning. And so it was really awesome, but it was such a good experience for the kids. But yeah, they didn't realize that how much work they were doing, because they were enjoying themselves so much.
Sweet, that's awesome. What do you think? So Cynthia put all the poems together in this book titled Imagine. And what do you think the significance of having a tangible thing like this with all of the student work in it? What do you think that meant to your kids, to your students?
They were so proud of it. They were so proud of it. And we were thinking in the classroom when I was passing them out, they were thinking about having each other sign the back of the book, kind of like how you would do with a yearbook, flipping through it. Where's my work? Where's my work? And the whole time as we're going through the program, Miss Cynthia is explaining to them, at the end, you're going to, this is what we're working towards. We're going to have this video, we're going to have the book. So you want to be represented in this book. So make sure that you complete your assignments and make sure that you get your work turned in. So again, it's not, they don't realize how much work they're doing, because they're thinking they're just, working towards the goal of our book. And so it's a really great way of getting students engaged and getting them to participate without them feeling that, like, oh, I got to do this. There was none of that. They were very excited about it. They were so proud of the book. And yeah, they were happy to bring it home. So
that's great to hear. That's great. Again, thank you, Cynthia, for putting the book together. The second activity I'd like you to share with our audience is the one that involved parents' hopes. So I think it's called My Parents' Hopes for Me. So Cynthia, as before, if you could share the intention behind this activity, what the students actually did, what it entailed. That would be great.
Okay, the activity My Parents' Hope for Me came from a conversation that I had with Mrs. Doran. It wasn't a part of the curriculum, at least not phrased that way. And having a side conversation with Mrs. Doran, we talked about so many things. I know that she was working on some things with heritage and inheritance, and that was introduced within the curriculum. But through that side conversation and what we felt the children needed, it gave me time to go back and sit and then think of a writing prompt that could quite possibly pull something from the children. And so My Parents' Hope for Me came forward, especially when you think about Octavia Butler and change. Wanted to build that bridge. And so to ask the children, what are your parents' hopes and aspirations for you? And again, taking that a step further, what are your teachers' hopes and aspirations for you? The community's hopes and aspirations for you? The world's hopes and aspirations for you? So those questions, it was a rapid fire gunfight, if I can use that word. It was a rapid fire gunfight of questions being asked of the children. And they grabbed on to the question that situated itself in them. And then they took it home to their parents to ask that question. And it sparked a conversation between children and their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and people within the community and people within the school building that they would not have had this conversation with. And, having one student, with me to ask me those questions who, like I said, I thought actually knew the answer of what my aspirations, were. So to see that multi-generational question coming out and the reverberating effect of that was astounding. The kids came back and they actually spoke about that, saying things that they did not know their parents' hopes for them. It gave a sense of ownership to who they are. It gave a sense of pride to who they are to become. And they wanted, it was like, I want to please my parents. I want to please my teachers. And, to even say, well, what do you want for us? What do you want for us? And then to have that question be rephrased again and say, now, what do you want from you? So that they can think about it, take it more so internally. It wasn't what I intended. It just happened to be what happened. It just happened to be what happened. I can't sit here and say I intended for the children to, really go home and ask these questions of their parents and find meaningful relationships. I can't say that that's what I intended. I really just intended for the conversation to start so that they could self-reflect, so that they could put together this thing that Octavia Butler is saying about change. All that you touch, you change. All that you touch changes you. And then to see how that journey goes and it reverberates out. It touches everyone, everything, every time, every situation. I just wanted them to be able to think about it in that respect, but to be a person on the other end of it, to have that question come home to me and to have to sit and answer that question with not just myself, but to have the question asked of my mother, to have the question asked of my daughter-in-law, to have the question asked of my little 3-year-old grandbaby. What is it that what do you want from me? What are your aspirations and your hopes for me? And to have a 3-year-old be able to answer that, and then to sit in it, the energy and if I can call it was like a spirituality of it, and the ancestry of it. I felt the responsibility and also the hope. Even my hope had gone further than I, ever knew it could be. And I started thinking about, and I wasn't going to say, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I started thinking about Mrs. Doran then. And I was like, the touch of her, the care and the love of her for her students, to say they need more. You know, what can we do? What can we do more? You know, how can you help in this situation? What can we do? And then to give leeway for that process to actually happen and for that question to be presented to the students, and then to 100% support the question when I'm not there. Those are the things that's not being said here. The partnership and the healing is about more than what you and the teacher may be doing in the classroom at that time on that day. It's happening when you're not there. There's someone constantly pushing this teaching ahead when you're not there. There's someone constantly asking these questions when you're not there. You might see it the 4, 5, 2, 1, 3 hours that you are in that classroom, but the healing that's happening outside of the classroom, or a teacher that's constantly teaching this curriculum, and not even this curriculum, but infusing it in other facets of their curriculum while you are not there, and to see it happening in the community, parents interacting with their children in a different way when you are not there. Wow, that's a whole different type of partnership. That's a whole different type of healing. You're just there watching it. You're just there. You're grateful that you get a chance to see little glimpses of it. So to say that was my intent, oh, no. I can't say that. I can only say that I'm very thankful for being privileged to be in the energy and the space to see something happen and be created. And created is the wrong word. I'm going to use it, to see something blossom and bud and fill the whole world with fruit is amazing, from just a simple question.
Absolutely. Wow. Thank you, Cynthia. Yeah, I mean, I loved hearing that this was something that was not initially planned. You all had that flexibility. You were able to make a decision together on how you were going to change things up so that you could do what was needed. And then look at what came out of that. Just absolutely beautiful. Aoife, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this activity, My Parents Hope for Me, and what you saw on your end as its impact on your students.
I think it's something you should add to your curriculum going forward forever, because it was so sweet. When they came in and the conversations they had at home, and then it made me as a parent stop and think, well, we think that our kids, of course my kids know what I want for them. Of course my students know what my hopes are for them, but do we have those conversations enough? And it was so sweet. And they, you know, I have some students who have some definite, you know, SEL needs, and some students who are dealing with some stuff at home, and to know that they had that conversation and how meaningful it was to the kids, it was just amazing. So I think definitely that's got to be in your plans forever going forward. And like Miss Cynthia said, it just kind of happened because depending on the kids in the class, you need to adapt, you need to be flexible and make changes to your curriculum. But so yeah, it just was a really happy surprise. But it really was very sweet to see the kids come in and say, my mom wants me to be healthy. My aunt wants me to be happy. And my mom has a master's degree, and she's hoping that I don't just get a master's degree. She's hoping that I surpass her. And just all these great conversations that had happened at home. And I mean, the kids could not wait to share. They were so excited to share. So being excited to come back to school and share with your class, like, that's awesome. So from a teacher's point of view, it was a fabulous activity. So
that's great. Thank you, Aoife. I'm wondering if you can speak to how you mitigated or worked with challenges that came up as these activities were taking place. You mentioned you have some students with SEL needs. Could you tell us any sort of challenge or any sort of extra effort that had to be made to assist students in being able to engage fully in this activity. Aoife, could you take that one, please?
Sure. So overall, the whole time we had that COVID challenge, we would find out at 9 o'clock at night that this class, one of our classes, is going remote tomorrow. We would be messaging each other at 10:30 at night, and just having to adapt the lessons in an instant. That was a big challenge. And so having that partnership and being able to, lean on each other, I think is really important. But then the certain students with having some real SEL needs, some kids that really needed to be heard in the classroom. And Miss Cynthia picked up on it immediately. I've got a couple of students that are coming to mind, and immediately she was able to pick up on this child needs some special care, or this child really needs to be able to be heard and has some things that they want to say to the class. And so you just really have to be flexible and just get to know your students and put in that effort to know, hey, this child is going through this at home and he's really doesn't want to even come to school, but when he's here, he's having a great time and he's getting that engagement and that attention from Miss Cynthia. So like just being able to have a partner to lean on was really valuable, because there's so much that our kids need, and one person can't do it all. So it was great to have that partner to lean on.
Awesome, Aoife. How about you, Cynthia? How would you describe any extra effort that had to be made to assist certain students, or any other challenges, maybe besides COVID, which was obviously a big one for everybody this year?
I think one of the challenges was, again, reimagining the curriculum to fit what's needed within the classroom. We do go in with a preconceived idea of what it is we're going to teach, but that flexibility, being flexible enough to switch that out to, you don't have to completely abandon the curriculum, but look at reimagine the curriculum and what the goal is at hand. That is a challenge. That was a challenge, but not so much of a challenge, but enough of it there to be aware of self, and how the domino effect of that, how this can affect the students, how this can affect you, how this can affect the community, how this can affect the classroom, being aware of all of those challenges. And then the energy shift. Challenges are energy shifts. Every classroom, every student brings a different energy, and being able to shift your energy to sometimes counter that and sometimes connect with that, to pull from that, is also a challenge that I think we need to be aware of, how you take that into your body. It's very important. That's part of that draining effect that you sometimes feel because of that shift in energy. So I think the challenge is being able to embody and then counter and then sustain a certain level of energy. And it's not just with the kids, it's with the time and the day. It's with the outside and forces, like we said, COVID-19, the shift from being in the classroom to being at home, the shift from having reliable connections to, the internet is not working with us today. What does that mean? And having to adjust is constant. The challenge is to constantly adjust and readjust and not just be adjust. And, saying those things to you, meaning you, the person, yourself, and then giving enough of yourself to your teaching partner that they can grab on to as well. And then you having the openness to be able to grab from your teaching partner what you need as well. So that those are challenges. Those are very real challenges, I'm going to say, for me as a teaching artist, and for me as a person, and for me as a spirit, and having all of those challenges met so that they weren't challenges. I think for Mrs. Doran and I, our greatest challenge was our greatest opportunity. So shifting that.
Yeah, I love that you identified a lot of those kinds of things, like, you know, the time of day, you know, is this, what is the energy like that of the group of students who are meeting before lunch versus the group that's the last class before they go home, and how you have to shift your energy. First of all, be aware of that and shift your energy to match what you're encountering in the space. I think that's a really important thing that I don't think maybe gets talked about a whole lot. So I'm really appreciative that you brought that forward. But I would like to get some engagement again from the group on interpretation of meaning in this activity, My Parents Hope for Me. So when you heard Cynthia and Aoife share, you know, this was something that was done, you know, it was not originally intended as part of the curriculum. They were flexible. They came up with this strategy and they went with it, and they saw amazing benefits. You heard Aoife talk about what the kids said their parents' hopes were for them, you know, whether that's a more advanced degree, you know, health, all kinds of things came forward. So I'm wondering how you interpret meaning in that type of activity, in that type of assignment. Go home and ask your parents, what are your hopes for me? And then build out from there. What are my community's hopes for me? What's the world's hope for me? It just kept growing. I'm wondering how you interpret meaning. What do you see as value in that kind of exercise? Please take a moment and put that in the chat, please.
I see Alice saying that meaning is found when students are encouraged to see their parents as a creative resource, which I think is fascinating. And Hector sort of along with that saying being embedded into a larger web of context and reactivating relationships between students and families. We're characters in narratives that we and others make for ourselves, which is also sort of bringing the story and the art making home. Hani says making connections with parents, family, and the community, helping students feel like they're a part of something big. Joanne says aligning empathy and belonging of healing-centered engagement. Oh, so it's moving so fast. By having this personal and intimate conversation. So a lot of folks are really finding meaning in like bringing the family into the classroom and bringing the classroom home, and helping students like see how they exist in their community and how their community exists in the world.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Love everything about it. Thank you, audience. Much appreciated. I love those reflections. Again, I'd love for students to have the last word on this subject of meaning. So students gave us some feedback on what resonated with them. If you could go to the next slide, I'd like to share a little bit more data. This time it's qualitative. We asked the question on the post survey, out of all the things that you did with Miss Cynthia, which was the most meaningful for you and why? And so a few students respond. Here are some examples of responses. The most meaningful one is when we banged on the tables and talked, because that was really calming and fun. Another student wrote about hope because she had hope for yourself. Another student wrote the most meaningful was when we wrote poems because I was able to write what I think and no one can tell me that it was wrong. And another student said the most meaningful activity was learning how to write a poem and the I am change sentences. I love always love reading what students have to say about their experiences in arts programs. I didn't include this in the slides, but we also asked the second question, what are you most proud of accomplishing during the program? And a couple of responses that stood out to me were, one student said, being able to understand my classmates like they're my family, and they know things about me that I don't usually tell other people. So talk about trust and vulnerability and transformative relationships, you know. Yeah, that hit me hard. Another quote was, you can understand their point of view when you let them talk and tell the story and see what they're seeing as something they feel proud of accomplishing during the program. So yeah, I love hearing directly from kids. It's like Cynthia said, you can't really predict what students will find meaningful, but I feel like when the ingredients are in place for being thoughtful and intentional about, you know, trying to have kids connect school and family, and, you know, the partnership with the school, with the classroom teacher to really make sure that there's collaboration around what it is you're really trying to get at, then these kinds of things can come forward that maybe, you know, are a surprise because they weren't planned. Great, so let's see. I think I want to transition now to your overall reflections on the session, your takeaways for your own practice. If you felt like there was anything that you heard about cultivating transformative relationships, helping students to develop transformative relationships, developing activities that address meaning, or maybe something else that may have resonated with you that, you know, just came forward, I would love for you to please insert that in the chat so we kind of know what really resonated. So please go ahead and share those thoughts, take a moment to think about it, and then insert that into the chat.
I'm going to let some things roll in so I can pick out some common themes. I'm seeing a lot about the relationships between adults in the school and in the classroom, and those being key to the residency and the work, and also for the students to see as a like foundation of relationships. Yeah, so lots about sort of communication with teachers and partners, and how that models for students. And a lot of folks also thinking about sort of flexibility. I see Zealand saying cultivating mindfulness in the moment. And I love that sort of like finding, you know, it's very hard to think on your feet thoughtfully in a classroom. So I appreciate you calling that out. But it seems like also relationships are really key to that, to creating that time and space. Let's see. Jane says warmth and presence. I'm not gonna be able to read out everybody's, but I do encourage folks to like go through. There's so much awesome reflection in the chat.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, appreciated. So yeah, I'm glad that you're hanging on to our conversation around relationships and partnership and the value of that and how it just has, the ripple effects in so many different ways. So that's great. We can transition to our next slide then, which is about continued learning. So for anyone interested in furthering their knowledge about healing-centered engagement, there's some resources here that I hope will be useful for you. They're really useful for me. Pedagogy of the Oppressed is a resource that Hani introduced me to and really encouraged me to read about a year ago. And that book is amazing and so valuable. And anyone who's interested in liberatory education, I highly recommend that you take a look at it. It doesn't talk about healing per se, but I feel like it really sets a foundation for, it's on the same trajectory of healing-centered engagement in terms of, I think its thesis. Jen Wright has a book called Hope and Healing in Urban Education. I strongly encourage you to check that out. And I believe he has a new book out. I'm blanking on the name right now, but once I have that, I will share that out with folks. My Grandmother's Hands, authored by Menachem, is a great resource. We heard some of the Changing Worlds folks heard about it earlier a couple of weeks ago when we did a workshop with Robin Reed, but it's a wonderful resource to address healing in oneself. And then the links here are to Jen Wright's website, to Flourish Agenda's website that'll have lots and lots of resources, as well as the YouTube video that I think is a great introduction to what healing-centered engagement is. So Courtney has made them all available for you. So I encourage you to check those out. And before we go to our final slide, we got a request for Cynthia to demonstrate what a call and response would look like. And Cynthia agreed to present that. So I'm actually going to turn it back to Cynthia for just a moment.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute myself. So it's a simple exercise. So what I'll do is I will say a line from Octavia Butler, which will be the call. And then you, as the audience, will respond with change, touch, change. And so you'll do that once I point to this. I'll do a point to the screen. Can you see my finger? This is really weird. I'll point to the screen and then you say change, touch, change. Okay. So all that you touch, you change.
Change, touch, change.
All that you change, changes you.
Change,
Change.
change.
The only lasting truth is change.
Change, touch, change.
Change.
God is change.
Change,
touch,
Change. Touch.
change.
Change.
And that was a quick example of call
Cool.
and response.
Nice.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you so much. And thank you, Alva, for asking that question. I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who helped put this together. This is very much a team effort. Thank you, Aoife and Cynthia, for being here to share your experience with the group, to help us reimagine and really try and absorb more of what healing-centered engagement can look like in arts practice. I feel like you shared so much. You were really vulnerable with us and allowed us to really see inside of your program. Thank you to Marco Brown for that amazing performance and allowing us to bear witness to what it was like for him being a part of the program. Thank you, Courtney and Ariel, for so much support in piecing all of this together and hosting all of us today. I also want to do a shout out to the Constellation Residents who, really helped push thinking, offered suggestions, just a wonderful thought group to be with over these last few months. And then to the Changing Worlds program team. Emma, thank you for helping me out today. This was fantastic. Loved hearing your voice, loved hearing the way you were able to synthesize and share out feedback in the chat. Thank you to Emma and thank you to Joanne. So I appreciate all of you. And I think Yumika is also here, and Alice, shout outs to Changing Worlds folks. Yeah, so I'm going to turn it back to Courtney. Or to Ariel.
Hi, all. So thank you so much for being part of this session. Make sure that you register for the second part. This was only part 1. So our next part will be talking about 2 of the other parts of karma, and Karen will be sharing that with us. And I believe everyone should be getting a survey as well. So if you could fill out that survey for us, it's really, really important, especially when we have our virtual programming. It's a little bit more difficult to get people to engage with the survey than it is in person, where we can kind of corner you and make you fill it out before you leave. So if you could please help us with that. It'll really help us to continue to shape our programming and support our residents in the next parts that we do. And there will be an email follow-up with the survey. So make sure that you click on that survey. I know surveys are, they're a little bit difficult, and Karen will probably also be poking you a bit to ask you if you filled out your surveys, if you are part of Changing Worlds. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Karen and Aoife and Cynthia. This has been absolutely wonderful. And you all have also been a really great audience. And Ingenuity and Changing Worlds, thanks you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
We love you, Cynthia.
Courtney, did you want me to hang back? Thanks, Emma. I'll see you later. Hi, Zach. You can sign off.